All right, welcome. Today we're going to dig into this really powerful idea, one that might totally change how you see yourself. It's all about our deep, kind of unbreakable connection to the people who came before us. No, seriously, think about it for a sec. When was the last time you thought about your great grandmother? Like her name, what she was actually like, the stuff she had to deal with? Yeah, if you're drawing a blank, don't worry, you are definitely not alone. For most of us, the past just feels so distant, right? Like a story about somebody else entirely. I mean, we live in a culture that is just completely obsessed with the now. The next phone update, the next trend, the next breaking news headline. And because of that, we end up treating this long, incredible story that led to this exact moment like it's just a bunch of old junk collecting dust in the attic. But here's the thing. What if that whole focus on the now is, well, just an illusion? What if the past isn't really past at all? What if it's way more alive, way more present in your day-to-day life than you could ever imagine? And this is the kicker, right here. Your very existence, you walking, talking, breathing, is basically the final triumphant chapter of just countless survival stories. Every single breath you take is proof. It's proof of an unbroken chain of people who somehow, against all odds, made it through. You know that weird pull you might feel toward the ocean? Or your knack for building things? Or even, yeah, the way you lose your temper sometimes? Those could literally be echoes from your ancestors. In honoring them, well, it's really about acknowledging this profound truth. None of us are self-made. We're a continuation of a story that started a long, long time ago. Okay, so they're part of our story, I get that, but why should we actually bother to care about people who are long gone? I mean, really? Well, the answer might be way simpler than you think. It all starts with one simple, super powerful concept: gratitude. Seriously, from a raw, honest perspective, just taking a second to appreciate the sheer grit it took for your family line to survive, that's a kind of superpower. It plugs you right into a story of resilience that's written into your very being. I mean, just think about what your ancestors survived. The Black Death, World Wars, the Great Depression, winters with no central heating. Not to mention countless famines and other hardships. These weren't just things you read about in a history book. For your family, these were life-or-death realities. And look, if they hadn't been tough or stubborn or maybe just plain lucky, you wouldn't be here. Period. So honoring them, it's a way of saying, I see what you went through, and I'm not going to waste the life that you bought for me. And on a more spiritual level, it's this idea that they're like a great cloud of witnesses, a cheering section up in the balcony of eternity. It connects to this belief that family isn't something that's broken by death. It's a way to practice humility, right? To see ourselves as just one link in this massive, maybe even divinely orchestrated chain, with a whole cheering section rooting for us. Okay, but does honoring them mean we're stuck living by their rules? The rules of the dead? Can someone who died back in 1842 really tell you how to live your life today? This is where it gets spicy. Think of it less like a legal mandate and more like a legacy of momentum. All those big decisions they made, the religions they chose, the countries they moved to, even the grudges they held, those things didn't just disappear into thin air. Nope. They set a trajectory. They created this kind of momentum that carries right on through the generations and helps shape who we are today. And this brings us to our job, which is super critical. It's not about blind obedience to the past. Not at all. It's about curation. We get to consciously sort through this whole legacy. We get to decide what to keep and what to kick to the curb. We can keep the timeless values, things like duty over desire, resilience, hospitality, and at the same time, we have to actively discard the destructive garbage, like prejudice and bigotry, and this whole might makes right idea. So the key here is to adapt, especially when an old value contradicts what we know to be a higher law of love and truth. The crucial point is this: honoring your ancestors absolutely does not mean repeating their mistakes. In fact, it's the opposite. It means being the generation that heals the family line. You take that same grit they had and you repurpose it to build something kinder, something better. And this whole idea, this parade of the dead, it isn't some new age trend we just cooked up. Nope. In fact, honoring your ancestors has pretty much been the default setting for most of human history. Take ancient Rome, for instance. Your family's honor was always on the line, and they took this stuff so seriously. They kept these wax masks of their ancestors, they were called imagines, right in the main hall of their homes. And these weren't just decorations, okay? They were a constant, silent reminder of the family's legacy. And get this, at funerals, actors would put on these ancestral masks and walk in the procession. It was literally a parade of the dead. Can you just imagine that for a second? You'd literally see the faces of generations of your family walking right alongside you. What a powerful public statement that was, that the entire family, living and dead, was present and watching. And hey, if you think the Roman tradition sounds intense, well, the Malagasy people of Madagascar take this to a whole other level. They practice a ritual that is so raw, so visceral, and it sends this incredibly clear message to the dead: you are still one of us. It's a ritual called the turning of the bones. They literally bring out the bodies of their ancestors, rewrap them in fresh cloth, and dance with them. Yeah, you heard that right. It's basically a party with their ancestors. And what this does, it just brilliantly illustrates a universal human belief that we've kind of lost in our modern world, that there isn't some hard wall between life and death. It's more like a very thin veil. All right, now if this is all feeling a little too spiritual or metaphorical for you, hang on. Let's talk about the ghost in your genes, because modern science is actually catching up and starting to prove that this ancient wisdom is literally true, right down to our DNA. So, is survival instinct hereditary? For the longest time, we thought of our DNA as this fixed, unchangeable blueprint. But what we're discovering now is that our ancestors' life experiences, they can actually add notes in the margins. They can physically change how certain genes are expressed for generations to come. It's wild. This whole field is called epigenetics. Basically, it's the study of how our behaviors and our environment can cause changes that affect the way our genes work. Scientists have found that these chemical markers can get attached to our DNA. Just think of them like little tags. And major life events, like trauma or a famine, can slap a tag onto a gene. A tag that can then be passed down, influencing everything from our health to how we behave. So, what this means is that you are literally carrying their survival mechanisms in your cells. That sudden, maybe even irrational burst of anxiety you feel, or that incredible surge of bravery you get in a crisis, that might not just be you. It could very well be your great-grandmother's survival instinct firing off, a biological echo from a life lived a long, long time ago. And all of this brings us to the final and maybe the most important question that this whole thing forces us to ask ourselves. What does it mean to become a good ancestor? See, honoring our ancestors is really a practice in long-term thinking. When we take the time to look back and acknowledge the bridge that was built for us, it naturally forces us to look forward too. It completely shifts our focus from just short-term gains to the long-term legacy we are building right now, with every single choice we make. So what kind of ancestor will you be? The real question isn't just about the ghosts in our blood, it's about the legacy we'll one day become. 100 years from now, when your great-great-grandchildren look back at you, what will they see? Will they find values that were worth keeping? Will you be remembered as someone who only lived for the now? Or will you be remembered as someone who planted trees they knew they'd never get to sit under?